It just doesn't get the worst at it. And the worst part about it is I gave it to myself today.
Let's call the Committee of the Whole to order. Tuesday, February the 15th, 2005. Councilman Lawson is present. Councilman Hodge, Vice Mayor Bell, Councilman Porter, Councilwoman Garner, Councilwoman Roman. The first item on the agenda is approval of the Committee of the Whole, Finance, Utility, Public Safety, Parks and Rec Committee meeting minutes of January 11th. Is there a motion for approval?
So moved.
Moved by Councilwoman Garner. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Councilman Porter. Questions? All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Approval of the Committee of the Whole, Finance, Public Safety, Utility, Education Committee meeting minutes of January 25th, 2005. Is there a motion for approval?
Motion.
Motion by Mr. Hodge, second by Mr. Porter. Questions? All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Item 3 is Bonella and Ajemo, Urban Design and Other Tasks.
Mr. Mayor and Council, this is a recommendation from staff for Council to approve a professional services agreement with Bermeo and Ajemo, architectural firm. As you know, we use their representative for urban design. This is a renewal of that and some expansion of services that they may provide to development services.
I'll move it, Mayor. We used them in the infrastructure, and it was a valuable asset to have at the call, you know.
I might add, Mayor, that the price tag is approximately $115,000, of which approximately $100,000 is recoverable under our cost recovery ordinance.
Moved by Mr. Porter, was second by the Vice Mayor?
Yes.
Moved by Mr. Porter, second by the Vice Mayor. Any questions?
Just a comment, Mayor.
Yes.
Charles, if you could keep me in the loop when you're meeting with Alfredo for the code changes, just make sure I'm there.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
No further comments. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Item 4 is the ILO Planning Group and Resolution.
Mr. Mayor, again, this is staff's recommendation. It's another professional services agreement. We've used Henry Eiler and his company quite a bit or extensively in the past. This is a renewal and expansion of some of the services that they provide. The estimated cost is $368,000, of which 60% approximately would be considered recoverable.
Moved by Mr. Porter, second by?
Second.
By
The other way around, Vice Mayor.
the Vice Mayor. And let me compliment the ILA group. The city's comprehensive plan evaluation and appraisal report was just outstanding. Job well done. Any further comments? All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? CRN report for 2003-2004.
Mr. Mayor and Council, this is the report you just
forwarded from the HERO
board.
The motion for approval? Moved by the Vice Mayor, second by Councilwoman Garner. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? A contract renewal with Arcata and Fay and resolution.
Mr. Mayor, staff recommendation that we renew the contract with Alcalde and Fay to represent the city as our lobbyists in Washington, D.C. We've had them for 2 years. There's no increase over last year's contract. They're not asking for an increase. I will say that over the last 2 years, they've been able to assist us in obtaining approximately $1.7 million and change for projects in the city. So they've done a very good job.
Is there a motion for approval?
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Porter, second by Ms. Garner. Question? And I want to echo that. I think they one of the best group we could have find in Washington, D.C. They're doing an incredible job for the people of Homestead. So.
Good return on your
investment. Good return on investment, Mr. Porter, you're right. Any further questions? All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Finance Committee items, technical assistant contract for EDA grant administration services and resolution.
Mr. Mayor, it's staff's recommendation that we approve an agreement between the city and Mrs. Nancy Phillips and Associates, LC, for the purpose of providing us technical assistance in our EDA grant, which is the $1 million that we got from as an EDA grant to work toward the construction of our substations and transmission lines.
Is there a motion for approval? Motion by Mr. Hodge, is there a second?
Second, Mayor.
Second by Mr. Porter.
She's done a lot of work for the city, and she's very successful.
Well, I will say that she was instrumental in assisting us with that grant for the $1 million in getting that.
But she's brought other
Oh, yeah,
grants.
she's done other grants and done very well with us.
Exactly. Thank you, Mayor.
Competent.
Thank you, Mr. Porter. Any further questions? If not, all in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Ms. Wallman, Park and Rec.
Yes, sir. This is a recommendation from the city manager that we authorize and execute the agreement with the Atlantic League for Professional Baseball. I brought this up at the last council meeting. There's a contract attached. We feel that it's a good thing. They're going to have approximately 220 players, 25 to 30 coaches and staff, and this is representing all 8 Atlantic League teams. The spring training dates are April 10th through the 26th, 2005. They're going to be using the dormitories. There's 84 doubles, 30 singles, the dining hall, and they'll use all the fields, including the main stadium, batting cages, locker rooms, the minor league clubhouse, which has an office that will accommodate an executive director and the team meeting room. The user fee is $40,000, $35,000 plus $5,000 facility and the field or the field improvement reimbursement. The responsibility of the user will be the security, the catering, the office furnishing and equipment, spring training operators, excuse me, payment of the staff overtime, which we estimate to be about $1,500, general liability insurance, and the city's responsibility will be to maintain the facility, the field maintenance and readiness, utilities, janitorial services. The benefits that we feel to the city: return of professional baseball spring training at the complex, which would be the 4th year for the Atlantic League, and the daily exhibition games, 10 a.m. and 1 p.m., which are open to the public, which are, it's wonderful to see the public have something that they can go to, and the revenue to the city and to the city. So that's it.
I'll for the motion.
Ms. Gardner?
I'll second.
Mayor Warren, second.
Good to see it used.
Oh, at last, for what it's supposed to be used for. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carried.
Question.
Oh, question, I'm sorry.
Thank you. Well, it's hard to
I can't see.
Hard to see from one end to the other. Seems to me that in prior use agreements that the user's been footing the bill for the utilities. I think the one that Mario used to do. My question is, have we done an analysis, or is there any way to analyze what the utilities bill would be if the user was footing that bill?
Councilman Losner, it would be approximately $3,500 with all expenses that the city would have to pay. We look to realize between $29,000 and $32,000.
So the utilities are not really a significant
It's not
portion.
a night game where you pay the demand charge of $4,000 the minute you turn it on.
These are afternoon games.
Okay, thank you.
And-
Just wearing the utilities hat.
And I just want to compliment Marlene and Kurt and the rest of the Parks and Rec staff for being able to come up with such a good agreement, because those night games, if we had to open the lights up for that, we're talking $3,000 to $5,000 every time we turn the lights on out there. So I want to give you great compliments. Thank you. Next item, Mayor, is a resolution approving urban and community forestry grant memorandum of agreement. And this is, I'll just give you my notes here. Parks and Recs Department is applying for a $35,000 grant through the Florida Urban and Community Forest Grant Program. If awarded, there is a $1 to $1 match for the city. The city would use this money to hire a consultant to conduct a tree inventory and a tree master plan, similar to what we did with our Parks Master Plan. Such an inventory and plan would provide guidance on future tree plantings, locations, and species, which is so important to plant the right kind of trees. Right now we're people are uprooting the black olive trees, because they just make a mess in the neighborhood. So we have to be very careful on what we plant. Having this inventory and plan will help us score additional points on future grant applications, including future Florida urban and community forestry grants and land acquisition grant programs. And of course, this plan is so important because we lost so much of our tree canopy during Hurricane Andrew. We've replaced trees, but the actual tree canopy, we lost all of that. So it's staff recommendation.
Move the recommendation, Madam Chair.
Second, Mayor. Second, Madam Chairman. Excuse me.
Mayor Warren made the motion. Mr. Porter seconded. Any questions from council?
Yes, Madam Chair.
Yes.
Kurt, because I guess what I'm hearing here is that we're going to spend $70,000 for somebody to tell us what we need to do, and that's before we buy the first tree. And I guess my question is, do we have anybody in-house? We have people who are in the landscape business who work with the city. We're the tree nursery capital of South Florida. And it would seem to me that $35,000 would go a long way to buy trees if we had that expertise or the availability of somebody to help us out locally, rather than spend money on another study that's going to take another 9 to 12 months and then have to go out and find money to buy and plant trees.
Well, one, I'm not aware of anybody that would put together a master plan. I'm sure we have people in there that could say this is a good tree and that's not a good tree, but to put a master plan together that we can use, then using that master plan as a foundation, you go out for other grants to purchase trees. And Marlene or Kirk, isn't there one we're going to go for after we get this master plan?
It's the same funding source, $50,000 for trees.
$50,000 for trees, same funding source, but they want you to have a master plan together before it helps you to be able to get the rest of the money to buy trees. And
this 70, if awarded, will get us a master plan.
Will get us a master plan and inventory of our current trees plus a master plan.
I just feel like we're being consulted to death.
Ms. Gardner? I'm sorry.
Yeah, it's up to 70. That was. I'm sorry.
I'm sorry. I missed some of this conversation down here, but I didn't hear what you were saying at the very end.
Oh, at the very end, I was saying that that we were using this to help us apply for and qualify for further grants, which to buy the trees, which was one of the questions that Mr. Losner has. He expressed a concern about, we got a lot of master plans going on in there, but probably, we're going to be presenting others.
But without the master plan, we can't apply for the grants. It's my understanding, correct?
That's correct.
So. Mr. Losner, any other questions?
That's all. Thank you.
Ms. Gardner?
I'd just like to point out, it's coming from impact fees, so we're using money that's come in for things that they need there anyway, so.
Any other questions or comments? No? I can't see anybody down there, so you have to speak. All right, we have a motion on the floor, and we have a second by Mr. Porter, I believe. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carried. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councilman Roman. Public safety items, Councilman Porter.
Thank you, Mayor. Item number 1 is a community grant award. I'll just refer to the manager if you would.
Thank you. Mr. Porter, Mayor and Council, this is a recommendation from the staff and the PD to accept a grant that we have been awarded in the amount of $61,627 from the Miami Coalition for a Safe and Drug-Free Community. The grant, bulk of the grant, and I'll explain how that breaks out, but a bulk of the grant will be used for the program is helping ex-felons merge back into the community, education, job training, and this will fund a coordinator spot or a contractual position to coordinate the reentry activities of these ex-offenders to help, at least to combat recidivism is the goal. When they get out, if they don't have anyone that helps guide them in the process and getting them back into the community, with jobs, job training, housing, education, those kinds of things, the likelihood of recidivism is greater. So this is the first year I think we personally had the grant. I think Weed and Seed has done this before, and our SOS group has put in for this grant. It also has $14,140 to pay for police officer overtime in putting on a project, what's called Project Safe Neighborhoods activities on gun safety and awareness. And they'll be conducting classes on gun safety and awareness and educating on the dangers of guns, educating the community on the danger of guns, and that will be pay the overtime and how to secure them in the home, those kinds of things.
Mr. Manager, let me ask you one question. Is this going to use an existing officer to do this, or is this going to be an additional officer?
That was my question.
I think this is going to use an existing overtime.
So it'll all be done by an existing officer, but through overtime pay and overtime hours.
That's correct.
I'll move it. That was my question. Thank you.
Moved by the Vice Mayor. Is there a second? Second by Ms. Garner. Any questions from council?
That's why we got overtime.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir, Mr. Foster.
With the existence of this program here, and I don't know what the history is, but would that kind of serve as an incentive or an enticement for somebody to come here that might not ordinarily come here once they leave government paid vacation?
I don't know. I think we're not the only ones running, these types of programs, and quite frankly, in certain areas of our community, we have gracious plenty who could take advantage of the program, unfortunately.
That are here anyway.
That are here anyway, that live and come from this community.
I have a comment.
Anything else, Mr. Lawson?
No, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Ms. Bell, Vice Mayor?
I think it's a great program, and I encourage it. And you actually asked my very question, because you always have the situation of if you hire somebody for it, when the program expires, then what do you do with the person you hired? So that took care of my one and only concern. I think it's a good program, and it's a no-brainer. It's a grant, so I would heartily move it.
Okay, it has been moved and seconded. Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. Thank you very much. The second item is a substantial improvement to the PD. Let me just start by saying a couple things. From my point of view, you as council members and the mayor sent me over there to work with the PD to come up with something that can be a significant change in the way they do policing in the community. And it's taken about 4 months of us knocking heads over there with to come to this agreement in mid-year. Now, this is mid-year, and that's a substantial effort on the PD and on the manager's office. But I will say that there was a lot of give and take. I think the council wanted more, and the police department wanted to get officers on the street, which was one of the significant things about this. The positions, they're not manager positions. They're officers in cars on the street doing the hand-to-hand combat, which I want to commend the chief on digging his heels in and saying that, look, I want to do it my way because I got to get officers on the street. And I just want to preface by saying that there was a lot of work and that did go into this plan, and that I don't believe it's really what we're going to have that's going to solve all of our problems. But again, this is a mid-year adjustment. We wanted more zones. We didn't have the staffing to do more zones. We will continue to work on that because I know that everyone up here is concerned with coverage. So that being said, I'll just refer to the manager. Any other comments that he'd like to make?
Well, again, we're asking to authorize me to do an amendment to the budget, or request amendment of the budget, I should say, and to include 9 additional new officers. When, as we all know, a population has grown. It has grown much faster than we anticipated. Even the people that are building the residences, I think the velocity for which these houses have gone up and been purchased has really outstripped any of our expectations. So we are kind of scrambling to play a little bit of a catch-up. I know that in the beginning, the chief and I had a lot of conversation about the budget, and we put 4 new officers on at the beginning of the year, and what we said we'd do at the 6-month time, we'd come back and review the additional officers that he asked for that he did not get. We all know we're talking pretty good money here. So that's why we want, we've been, instead of just, let's just do it, we've been very careful, and both sides have been very careful to look at the numbers. With these 9 additional officers, our estimated population right now, it puts us at about 1.89 officers per 1,000 in the calculation. 2.5 to 3 is somewhat of a national standard for officers per 1,000, depending on jurisdictions. The number of officers per 1,000 is not the only criteria, but it's an important criteria. Another issue we've had is that because of the growth of the city, there will be also a reorganization of the districts within how we operate. And so we're going to have a District 1 and a District 2, one of them covering the west of the highway, one of them covering the east side of the highway. And officers are assigned to those districts, and that's where they stay in most cases. There are a couple exceptions. If there's an emergency call and they need officers, they come from wherever to serve the emergency, whoever's available. However, on regular calls, each officer stays in their district and handles the zones within their district. One of the issues we had officers prior to that. We didn't have the 2 distinct districts. We had 1, and that goes back to previous history with the city. And when they responded and they needed backup or needed a service call over to the east side, they'd run over to the east side and handle it if they weren't there. Now the traffic and such has increased our response time to get to the east side. And it's not meaning we don't get there as quickly as we pride ourselves in our response time. So now we're stationing a number of officers on the east side to stay, a number of officers on the west side to stay. And they won't mix except for exceptional circumstances. This is an issue. I mean, we've been looking at, the police department's about 40% of our general fund budget. So we're talking about a huge amount of money that we have to make sure we cover. So that's why we look at it very carefully and incrementally. However, on the other side of the coin, we don't want to mess around too much with public safety, if you know what I mean, and not giving them the resources that they need. So those are the 2 competing kinds of scenarios going on. We're trying to find the best position to be in and give the best service at the least expensive cost that we can. And if you'll remember, in the 2000 census, we were 30,909 was what the 2000 census gave us. And there's a number of ways we can look at how we calculate where we are today. The University of Florida is going to come out in April and say we're 36,500 population. However, Mike and I and Marlene, some of the people, we were looking at statistics. In 2000, taking those statistics of 30,909, then counting the actual certificates of occupancy that we have issued on new houses being built, and multiplying those by the averages that are used we actually use 2.5. It can go from anywhere to 2.5 to 3.1, depending on who you're talking to, but we use 2.5. We really estimate our population right now at 39,149. So about 3,000 difference, 2,500 difference from what the University of Florida is going to come up with. At any rate, we are in the midst of doing the 10-year plan. The budget estimates versus expense estimates, and it's pretty sobering when you look at it. But it's clear that the population growth is going to be rather large for the next, I would say, 5 years in particular. So actually 4 years will give us our bulk growth, the most of our growth in the next 4 years. We end up in 2015, because we did the 10-year, at an estimated population of 67,573 people, based on the number of COs we know about, and we know there's some that we don't. I mean, the number of housing starts that we know are in and developments that are in place now. We do know that there's some that we don't know about yet and haven't added in, so that is going to increase. But with what we know now, in 10 years we're going to be 67,573 people. And next year we should go to 43,521 in 05, this year rather. In 06 we should be at 49,938, so that's 1 year more than this year. Then the next year we should be at 55,593 in 2007. And then it just goes on, you know, from there. I just wanted to bring these stats out because this won't be the first time we're going to face, not only with the police department, but with other agencies. I'll be quiet and let someone respond.
No, I just wanted you to repeat 2005. You gave me...
We're estimating 43,521 population in 05, at the end of 05.
Okay, because I think this is so apropos that we're talking about this, because we all know that we need more police officers. I think we need more than what we're even voting on tonight. But anyway, that's my personal opinion. But you know, you hear all these rumors out there, and I hear them myself. Oh, our population is going to double in 3 years, or our population is going to triple in 7 years. And it's so important that we keep these lines of communication out, because it scares people. You know, they think, oh my goodness, you know, how could it be 60,000 or at this it would be 70,000 next year? And I hear it. I don't know if other people do, but I hear it everywhere I go. I hear this. So it's so important, and I applaud you, Mr. Manager, for taking the time to do this research, because this is so important for people to realize that we are trying to use growth in a steady, you know, very analytical way, instead of, you know, what other people sometimes think. So it's important that we have these statistics, and I would like to see that done in an article or something, so that the scare factor of doubling population. I just heard that this morning. Somebody called me and said, did you know that the population is going to double in 2 years? I said, no, I didn't know that. You know, so it's very important that we keep people informed.
Yes, there'd have to be some significant things that we're not aware of for that to happen. And we know that these are projections. If this does not include the Southwest Master Plan and any development, that increase in development that comes out of there.
Or annexation.
Or annexation.
But as we stand here
right
and now,
with what we
you know,
these are the numbers.
Thank you.
And we'll make these projections available to you. But when we look at this, and of course this is the night for the police officer night, but you know, as we look at this, in 2005, you know, to keep a 2.2 ratio, we need 96 officers. To keep at the 43,521, we need 96 officers. We're currently, with this, we'll be at 89 officers. But this is at the end of 2005. So we're looking at ways, I mean, these are major expenditures, because the COs, the money in ad valorem, does not always catch up. When the CO is issued, it might be a year before we see that money, so we're always lagging behind.
Right.
And as you know, the ad valorem tax we collect here has never covered the police department since I've been there. And I mean, I've been here 17 years now, so when I came in first as police chief, the ad valorem tax never covered the expense of the police department. And as we go through, we have yet to play catch up with that and to make that happen. So these are all, and a lot of this I'm kind of expanding the conversation a little bit for, because we do have residents in the audience. I want them to know what we're dealing with in looking at these things. So public safety, again, is the paramount service that we can provide people in our city. So again, I think this is...
Well, I just want to ask one more question.
Well, you know, this is timing is right to add these 9. As we go, we'll be talking with the police department. We want to do analysis of the types of calls on these increased calls and those kinds of things. Areas, looking at alternative ways other than just saying, okay, let's throw bodies at it, let's look at alternative ways. And at the end of the day, it may come we just need to add more police officers, but we are trying to analyze that to get the old common term, more bang for our buck that we can, or as much as we can.
Also, how many square miles is the city? Because I know you also take into account square miles as well as you do population.
It's approximately 16 square miles. We're almost 10,000 acres. in the city.
If I could just finish up.
I'm sorry.
You said there were 89 officers, so would bring us to 89 officers?
That's correct.
And then projections show that we would need 96 officers?
As the way we did our chart, it was at the end of 2005, we'll need 96, so we're 7 away from that.
Okay. And also, have you, I think it's so important to talk about this, well, we have people in the audience that care, but have we looked into putting a substation in over east of the highway, or is that coming to fruition?
We've talked about that, and we've talked about doing something in an interim basis, like we did with the fire department, using the baseball stadium as a point of operation for both fire rescue truck to be out there before they build their stations out there, and also to have the police department work out of there for now until we determine.
I think we really need that, and I think that the presence of the police officers, both east and west, and I think it was Captain Kennedy, Chief, if I'm not mistaken, that designed the districts, the two that set up the two. He's shaking his. Are you shaking your head? No.
Don't blame me for that.
Well, I like it.
Yeah.
I like it,
Oh, yeah, okay,
and I want to compliment you on that. He's looking at me.
But let me just make one comment. Let me just make one comment to this, because one of the things that the police department, we've worked on through this, it is a significant amount of undertaking to ramp up the PD to do its job correctly. And obviously, one of the debates that the chief had was the use of a substation. He doesn't at this particular point in time want to split the department in half. But what we talked about was a community policing, a very heavy, effective community policing effort that would give us some sort of a footprint, some sort of a visible appearance in the eastern part to cover that zone.
That's what I'm asking for.
And it's a terminology issue.
Pretty much a storefront,
Sir?
a storefront approach.
Well, obviously we needed to get this portion in front of the council as quickly as possible, and we wanted to follow up with some other issues, and I think obviously Ms. Waldman, with you being the head of the Parks and Rec, we would need to facilitate some sort of meeting with your team to figure out where we would put it, how it would look.
Well, we're ready to go on that. So we have open arms, open doors, because we want to see it happen. We used to have an officer. Actually, it was Randy. He used to be at the Villages. He was at the Villages of Homestead. We had a little room for him there. Maybe we could see that happening. Where we could go into the actual developments and place an officer. I think that I just want to see more and more and more of you out there. And my last comment and question: these 9 officers that are going to be hired, will we be able to go to our new reserve officers at all? Would we be able to consider any of those for hire in these positions?
Yes, ma'am. They have first preference at this. We usually deal with them first, and also as long as we send them to the Reserve Academy, so we can have somebody on hand just in case this happen. Rather than spending 3 or 4 months to put them on a roll, we can do it within a month and a half.
Wonderful. And Mr. Porter, I might say to you that you've done an excellent job. You followed in your father-in-law's footsteps, and I think you've done an excellent job bringing all this together. So I want to commend you for that.
Thank you very much, but I want you to know that the police department is very aware of all of the concerns of the council. And I would say that this is, the first step in probably a few steps that we're going to have to undertake in order to take care of this community as it sprawls out in all directions. One of the things I'd like to say, just for the record, for the manager, is that as the new communities come in and they assume so much of the responsibility of their own cost of doing business through these CDDs, one of the things that we are really truly responsible for is the public safety aspect of it. So from a budgetary impact or a future budgetary issue, these communities are taking a lot of that responsibility upon themselves. So when we look at $1 million investment in next year, and the fact that you know, the ad valorem hasn't gotten here yet. At some point in time, we've got to put some money in the hole and plug the gap, because the ad valorem will be coming into the city, and it may be a little bit behind, but at the end of the day, the customers are out there and they need the service today. And I compliment you for stepping up to the plate and letting this come forward and dealing with this mid-year, knowing that when we go into the budget this year, this upcoming year, we're going to face a similar scenario where we're going to have to look at this very difficultly, and we may have to make some other bold steps as well.
But I think I know what you're talking about.
But let me just say this, because if we look back at previous budgets, the police department has tried to do estimates just like everyone else does. They estimate a need for X number of officers. They don't get those, so they're 4 short. The next year they estimate the need. They don't get those. They're 5 short. Now they're 9 short. You know, so over the years, as we've experienced, you know, the shortfalls in our budget, at some point in time we had to put some money into that budget, because the officers are behind the curve. This gets us just behind. It doesn't get us really caught up. It gets us just behind. So from my perspective, from the council, I think we need to really look at when we go into the budget this year, we need to look at this very delicately and look at the cost that it is involved in policing these communities, realizing and knowing that they are absorbing and assuming so much of their own cost of doing business through their CDDs. Because if I'm not mistaken, they maintain their own roads. They maintain a lot of their own systems. So there is a cost savings to the city in one respect. So, from my point of view, we do need to look at the public safety aspect of it as a critical component.
Well, it just so happens, coincidentally, that, you know, we did our first blush at our 10-year financial plan. A little scary, but that's just the first blush at it. But we're looking, just for another statistic for you, when we look at these, you're trying to say, okay, I've got to hire these many, say in this case we're talking about police officers, these many police officers. But what we looked at is that, one thing we looked at is that for every 200 COs, it comes out in this ratio, you need a police officer for every 200. It's 183, we just said 200 COs, certificate of occupancy. Every time 200 houses are completed, that really qualifies for one more officer. And it's costing probably, we estimate, about $500 a resident for police service in the city, somewhere in that area. So we've been doing these numbers just to get a feel for this whole thing, and I think we may have, you know, we got to talk about quite a bit in the upcoming budget, because you're absolutely right. With the increase of the houses coming on, we're to keep any kind of the ratio that we need is going to involve additional officers, no doubt.
Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Manager, as you look at your 10-year projections, do we ever catch up in terms of ad valorem and police expenditure? Never.
Never. Well, not in the 10 years, let's put it that way. And that, like I said, this is the first blush. I mean, we've kind of attacked this whole situation considering, you know, making assumptions about the crime rate, which we need to maybe look at a little more. We need to look at other alternatives that are there, and it may end up, like I said, at the end of the day, we're just adding more officers. But we haven't really, at this point, because we just did this yesterday, I think we were spending pretty much of a half a day looking at this 10-year projections that were coming in. You know, they look pretty dismal at first, but, you know, that's the way it is. And then as we go in and start breaking this down a little more, refining our assumptions, refining our estimates, we start bringing things somewhat in line.
Are we comfortable with the current impact fees? Mr. Porter made reference to the delay in receiving the ad valorem. Well, are we okay in terms of, is that an area we probably want to take another look at to have adequate resources available, so the time frame there, we could use some impact fees to carry these folks over until the taxes start coming in?
Well, let me just say this. One is, I'll let Mike comment on that, because we are, And two is, remember, on these impact fees, they can't be used for salaries, they can only be used for capital.
Capital equipment, yeah.
But if we don't have to pay for capital, we can turn it into general fund money into something else.
That's correct.
So it's kind of 6 of one, half a dozen. Mike, if you want to comment on that.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, council members, actually the study is in progress. The same person who did the original study for us is doing updating the study.
And Elena, the fund, the 798,000 is coming from what line item in the budget?
We either have to go with fund balance or we have to go with unbudgeted revenues up to this point of the fiscal year.
Thank you. Well, I am, Mr. Port, I agree with Councilman Wall, and I want to thank you for taking the lead on this as the chairman of public safety and bringing it to our attention. This is needed, and as we look toward the future, I see we're really going to have to focus in not only on the need for police officers, but we had a discussion before, Mr. Port, and I'm saying this because I hope you take a look at this. Your code enforcement needs some work, and I know Mr. Laza made a comment at the last meeting about licensing of properties that for rental. We could generate revenue to justify increase in that area. And I would hope that your next assignment would be to take a second look at this code enforcement and the recommendation from Captain Chung, because that's another area of concern in this community, that we're not doing enough in terms of code enforcement activities in the city of Homestead. But I appreciate this proposal. I think it's timely, money well spent, and I like the way that the police department organizes in districts. That we have always bragged about our 2 to 3 minute response time and calls, and I think with this recommendation we would still meet that test, Mr. Chief. So thank you all very much for your hard work on this. It's been a very thorough job, and I think it will send a very clear message to our new homeowners on the east side that we do care about public safety, and in response to their concern, we're adding 9 more officers in addition to the 4 we just gave you, Chief, in October. So you're talking about 13 in less than 6 months. So it's a major improvement, and Mr. Port, I hope you keep your eye on the prize and continue to look at it, and as the need arises, we need to address it. So thank you all for a job well done.
Madam Mayor. Mr. Lawson.
Thank you, Mr. Porter. I don't think any of us here in the audience or on this side of the table question the need for this expenditure, not only for response time, but for the safety of our officers. There's no question about that. And I know many of you here tonight, we first met on tax issues. And when I was looking at the package one more time this afternoon, I kind of ran some numbers. And, the baseline's $1 million a year for these 9 new officers that we all agree we need. And to put that kind of in perspective, just so when we start talking about taxes again this summer, when the proposed budget comes up, at our current tax rate, it takes about 740 houses assessed at $175,000 each to pay just for the new officers. And if we had a tax rate down this time of year where we like it to be, it's almost 880 houses assessed at $175,000. So that's an important perspective to keep. And the mayor beat me to the punch on it tonight. My standard thing has been a couple of side issues. We talked earlier tonight about other things the council has done, has paid dividends on decreased police calls and need for police services. And I think the same is true throughout particularly our east side communities, with enhanced code enforcement, the licensing of rentals, and the ability of homeowners groups to clear tenants through their association. We can go a long way to keeping the need down for those 3 officers or 2.5 officers that, the need is not there, and we're fortunate, I think. And one of those things are the statistics, I think, are going to be that our new residential neighborhoods are not going to really require the level of, or not call for the number of calls that some of our older areas and the multifamily calls for, but even, citywide, I think that, again, with the code enforcement enhancement and licensing and neighborhood control of who's living in your neighborhood on a rental basis, we can really help the police department substantially and keep officers safe and keep the response time there and not spend way beyond the ad valorem that we take in just to have the kind of community that we need to have. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Sir, Mr. Lawson. Ms. Garner?
Thank you. I'm very glad to see this. We've been waiting for this. I keep bugging the chief, bring it on. The next thing that I hope you work on, as they've said, is code enforcement. I've spoken to Captain Chong. I've asked him to create some SOPs, not only to protect them, but so that when they get more people, it'll be easier, standard operating procedures. And Charles and I have discussed, Development Services and I have discussed that we could give two code enforcement officers full-time just doing the business licensing. So if you need information from us, 3 people, Rick says. We'd be glad to forward that to you. I hope you bring something aggressive like you're bringing this. And I do hope to see at next budget time additional officers. And I'll offer the motion if you like.
Okay, motion made, Ms. Wallman.
Well, I'll second it, but I'd like to
Ms.
say
Wallman.
something. You haven't heard much yet about our beautification committee, but we too are working with code enforcement, and I'm going to go back to our original, I think it was almost 4 years ago that I brought this up, and that was to try to initiate some of the people who live in our community who might be retired that might want to serve on, and I forget now what they were called. I think they're public service code. The cities give them a name, and they drive around and they write down where they see what they think are code violations. They come back, and that frees up the time of the code enforcement officers. And this is done on a volunteer basis, so that frees up the time for the code enforcement officers to really do what they need to be doing, and that is citing these people. And they can take pictures, now that we have the digital pictures, it's so easy to do. So I'm hoping that we can revisit that, Mr. Porter, and as our beautification committee grows, we are going to be taking a bus tour, and we're going to be going around and seeing some of the areas that we really need to focus on and to clean up. And we're trying to take some of that burden off of our code enforcement officers because we know they're so overworked. And you remember at one time, I worked with the police department with Mr. Sincor's blessing, and I mean, there were just pages and pages and pages of violations that we didn't have time to follow up on. And one house, I think at the time, was worth maybe $50,000, and it had over $75,000 in liens on it, and we'd never even gone there. So there's revenue there as well. So I want you to remember that if we continue to move forward with our code enforcement, that's revenue that's going to be brought into our city that will pay for many of the services that we need. But I hope that we do have your blessing with our beautification committee and some of the suggestions that we're going to be putting forth in a plan to work with the police department on, Mr. Porter.
No doubt, 100%.
Thank you.
Any other comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. Let me just say one thing to the council. I thank you guys very much for all the input that gets made at this dais. It helps the police department react to your needs and your wishes, and I think this is an example of exactly that. The debate getting back to the police department. Go ahead, Chief.
No, I just wanted to personally thank the mayor and council for supporting this proposal. It means a lot to us because, we are in charge of the entire city. And to have this accomplished tonight and you all to vote a yes on it, we really appreciate it. And Mr. Porter, thank you 1,000 times, along with the manager. We spent a lot of time putting this together. And I would say that Captain Kennedy and Sergeant Bell did a lot of work for me as well. But the 4 of us, along with the other 2 captains, we put it together. We did it the right way. It's not padded, but we did it for the city. It's nothing personal for us. We did it for the city because the people in this town come to Homestead because of our services, and we want to keep it that way. So thank you. I really appreciate it.
Well, just for information, everything that gets said, we can only deal with certain things in certain time frames, and one of the most important issues for us as a working group was to deal with the additional positions right now. And we obviously are dealing with code enforcement. Mayor, I know you set aside some money in this year's budget for code enforcement, but we're working on that as well. And I know Ms. Garner through the code is working on that. So there will be more coming out very, very fast. And I just want to thank the council for their very innovative thinking and outside the box and looking at it from a whole holistic point of view. Thank you, Mayor.
Chief, about how quickly will we start seeing these new officers on the street?
It's going to take us probably, well, once everything is blessed, I think next Tuesday, we have some people that we can pretty much put them in the role right away. We're going to transition them in, maybe some starting, I think, maybe next month, and then we'll probably do the other 4 and 5 maybe in May. But some of them going to be a little shorter because we got the reserve officers, and some of them we're probably going to go outside because we always want to keep that mixture of people, in the department to make sure everything runs smoothly. Wow. So they'll be out there pretty soon.
Thank you.
Mayor, that's all the public safety business, Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Porter. Any business, Mr. Losner, for the Committee of the Whole?
No, thank you, Mayor.
Mr. Hodge?
No, sir.
Vice Mayor Bell?
I just want to say that when you choose the people to volunteer to cite other people for violations, I want to be one of those people. I see it all the time, and I tried to follow a truck today, and I lost him behind a school bus and a bunch of other cars, but I watched a lawn service dump all of their clippings in a Homestead property and take off. And they went over. I followed them from a far distance, but I lost them. They were dropping off their workers.
I want to say one of the things, excuse me, we always forget to thank the community because, without them sometime, we don't get things done. But this support from the new people just moving to Homestead, that tells you a lot. We really appreciate it, and thank you for being here tonight. Thank you.
Mr. Porter?
No, thank you, Mayor.
Ms. Garner?
No business, Mayor, thank you.
Ms. Roman?
Thank you, sir.
We'll have public comments at this time. Any comments from the public? Any comments? Give us your name and address for the record.
Is it turned on?
Sorry. Okay. Mary Beth Leathers, 2110 Northeast 37th Terrace. I know you guys worked with the CDD. What about the new clubhouse that's being built out there as a temporary storefront for the police? If that could somehow be worked out, that maybe they wouldn't even charge you guys rent, or something that you could say, we want to be in the community, but look, the that clubhouse is sitting there right now. It's still not built all the way, but maybe you could get them the South Day Adventures to say, okay, we can make a space in there for you guys to have a storefront right around there.
That was discussed, and obviously we needed to get the positions first, but that was certainly part of the discussion, was to try to maybe do it in one of the communities or some version of. Obviously at this particular point in time we have control of the baseball stadium. It's there, yeah. It's up and running, so that was our first. We know we can do that. Besides that point, obviously some contact inside the communities. I think Ms. Wallman made that comment, but we had to do the positions first.
Yeah, and thank you very much for hiring the police officers, or getting them to hire, because Portofino Bay really appreciates it. Thank you.
Thank you.
I didn't mean to interrupt. I'm sorry.
No. Yes, sir. Name and address for the record.
Good evening. Jesus Rodriguez, 2009 Northeast 40 Road. First of all, I'm not here to complain today, but thank you very much for all the help you guys gave us with the previous issue, and thank you very much for the 9 police officers you've approved to put on the road. What I do want to say is that I don't think it's enough. I'm glad to hear that you guys are interested in putting more officers on the road. One thing to please take into account, I know the city manager has spoken about ratios of 1.8 per thousand. The average is 2.5. I think that's got to be taken into account on a community by community basis, and not focus so much on numbers, but actually get feedback from the community to see if what's actually out there is enough. Because I feel right now we're very lacking in that department. I think the police department has done an outstanding job with the resources they have. Honestly, Captain Kennedy and Chief Earl could not do a better job with the resources that they have. I just feel that we need to support them a little more and get a couple more officers out on the road. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Any other community input? If not, thank you all very much for coming.